This is Benny Goodman, and as you probably know by now, I'm attacking your eardrums with my voice. I'm sorry about that, but that was also a lie. That said,
you have a propensity to get too close to the mic.
Am I too close now?
No.
I feel
but
like
you might be in this episode. I don't remember.
It's a metaphor, but it really happened because I'm trying to get close to people, and I mean, what I do is I mentally visualize it. Just like Jason Lekberg, our guest this week, gets really close to the truth about the music industry. What do you think, Cory?
I think he's dropping knowledge left and right in this one. If you are an artist or a musician or anyone that's trying to market a product, Jason is a guru.
Well, just so people know, Cory and I are, well, quote unquote, and this is in quotes, producers. And all the time, people are like, hey, so what do I do? How do I become the biggest musician ever? Watch these episodes, and if you still want to be the biggest musician ever, watch them again.
You might not like the answers, though. It's a lot of work.
No, but what's super cool about Jason, of course, I remember this, is like you have this impression of marketing guys where they're sitting in suits in an office. And then we got on Zoom. I'm like, dude, you look like the people I see backstage. So what's really cool about him to me is I feel like he really does see both sides. And he had some amazing input about marketing and branding and, you know, how to really forward your career with your strategy.
We should also make mention that we also reference the Oracle, or as we like to refer to him as Dan Beck, who was our previous manager and also a music legend. So when you hear us talking about him, just know that he's in the queue and that he's chapter 2 of things that you must do if you want to learn anything about actually doing something in this business. Like make a podcast.
Yeah, and we also talk about Adam Gilbert, who we've mentioned in previous podcasts, and we keep promising we're going to get his episode out. So we'll do that at some point, too.
Well, the problem is there have been so many drummers lately. Like, how many drummers could you have in a room at a time or on a week? Like, I'm drummed out, man.
Yeah.
I need to like
drummers have a lot of knowledge, though. I learned a lot from drummers.
It's like serotonin. I have to have like it reuptake. You know what I mean? Before I'm able to release the happy chemicals again.
So you're going to hear some stuff about Dan Beck and Adam Gilbert. Those episodes are coming. We promise. We release things in random orders because we have no idea what we're doing.
Yep.
Listen, in the words of David Lee Roth, where's your number 2 pencil? Write this shit down.
That's a great tagline for this episode. So let's get into it with Jason Lekberg.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Goodman, and welcome to another edition of 2020. We have on the dais over here Miss Siobhán Cronin, the illustrious violinist. You're an economic person that knows biology.
I mean,
and then over here we have Cory Peza, not to be confused with just a bass player. He's more than that. He's a mixing guy. He's a production guy. He can play guitar better than most guitar players. I wouldn't want to call him just a bass player. And then of course, I'm so excited that we have Jason Lekberg, who like I can't even read all the things that he does. I had to make notes. Jason, I'll just start off by saying, is the hardest working dude in the music industry on so many levels, and we'll go into the levels of inception that Jason is there's just such a dichotomy / Venn diagram to what he does, as far as, you know, maybe he's getting coffee for Glenn Tipton, and then at the next moment he's singing really angry heavy metal lyrics and having it mixed by the guy that works with Sting. So it's like, I'm confused and I have lots of questions. So with that, why don't we talk to Siobhán? She has something meaningful to say, I'm sure.
What do I have to say that's meaningful? I was just about to say that in addition to your resume, you have incredible hair. Like, I didn't actually look up what you look like, and it wasn't intentional. I was like, oh, you know, you like get emails from people and you like think about what they look like maybe. But yeah, you have some of the most amazing hair.
What did you think Jason looked like?
Thank you.
I don't know. I guess I don't even want to go there because it's just going to sound judgy. So we'll move on.
Did you think he was a suit?
Yeah.
Is that what you were expecting?
A little bit. But that's really sad, because what I was going to say is, like, whenever someone sounds super like professional and on point, you somehow just don't imagine them possibly looking cool in real life. You know what I mean?
Well,
like, that's really stupid. But Like for some reason that tends to be true.
Well, it's like thinking that
you
drummers
nailed it.
don't read. And when Adam Gilbert's like, I like to suggest books to people, it's like, it is unnerving because you don't hear a lot of drummers say, hey man, have you read, Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist? Like that's not ever come out of like John Bonham's mouth, I don't think. I mean, he wasn't alive when that was written, but needless to say, I don't think he would have read it.
Well, we're all about breaking the stereotypes here, so.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. Yes. I get that a lot though. I get I expected you to be a suit, or I thought you were going to be like all buttoned up, and I'm like, no, I'm sleeved,
Yeah,
like, sorry.
Nice.
See, I usually get the opposite. People expect me to have long hair and to be badass, and then this Seacresty dude shows up, and they're like, who is this dude? They're like, you're the guy?
I honestly had no idea what to think you would look like based on your personality. There were just like so many options when I first talked to you.
So yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, we've been working with Jason with Lost Symphony, lostsymphony.com.
Lostsymphony.com.
I'm missing my advertisement
I know, I'm missing
right
mine
here.
too. I'm in like a different place every week.
Hang on.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh my gosh, I'm being shamed again.
Pick up chapter 1 right now. There we go. But Jason's been working with us for quite a while, helping us
officially.
with the...
I was going to say, officially, Jason runs Lekberg Enterprises, and he is not only the singer of multiple bands, on the ground level, killing it, literally, with I Kill Ya, and a new band that I'm going to let him talk about, but he has worked at Epic Records. He has... it sounds to me like you got in on the social media thing pretty fucking early on in the game, so, like, you're kind of... I mean, I think one of the things that actually it says on here for me, what does an executive account director do for the marketing company that represents relationships between celebrity and social media? Like, I'm reading these things on your resume and I don't even understand them. Like, I don't even know what it means. It's when my dad tries to explain the stock market to me. I'm just like, did I lose money or do I have to clean dishes? What do you do, Jason? Can you explain to us plebeians?
What's a day in the life?
Yeah, well, I mean, that specific title, we could talk about that one. That was years ago. That was 2006 or 7, something like that. And that was a company. There was a guy who had a management company. He managed a lot of big bands. And he met a guy who owned a company called Snapvine. And I don't know if you remember that technology back in the MySpace days. But it was a place where there's a little widget on your MySpace page and you could call a phone number and leave a voicemail for an artist or for a celebrity or for anybody. Yeah. And this manager said, you know what? I think this might be a thing. And he put it on Mudvayne, actually Mudvayne's MySpace page, and melted Snapvine's servers. Like their server completely crashed. Sure. And so he said, you know what? I think there's a company here. So he started this company that what we did is we went out and we represented every emerging technology we could find. And then we went to all the bands and said, hey, this new thing, at that time it was called Web 2.0, like this new web thing is the future. Let us represent you. And then we just put the two together and we would do all kinds of different promotions using these crazy different technologies. And I'm everything from the big names now, Twitter, Eventful, Reverb Nation. We were the first agency for all of those. But then we also did one called Anamigo, which was a social media for pets. And then we did a thing called Zwinky, and it was like the early version of like avatars, digital avatars in the, inside computer world. And we put on a concert, a streaming digital avatar concert in 2007 on Earth Day with like Little Mama and T-Pain and like, all that stuff. So at that time, that job was literally being the person between the celebrity and the technology and going, how do we market both of you to get both of you exposure? And that was kind of my first paid gig in the music industry. Because before that, I was a house painter and I just yelled at stuff and tried not to fall off stage.
Wow. Okay. I was wondering how you end up there. So like, what about like prior to that? Like, what was your background like prior to the working stages?
I mean, I came in, I'm from the Midwest, so out there's not much of a music industry. Yeah.
Tell me about it. I had to leave.
Is it soda or is it pop or is it Coke?
We called it pop, but I've called it soda for a long time since I went away, I've been transitioned.
Let Jason answer.
But no, go ahead. Sorry.
You're
right. Tell me about interrupting then.
You're absolutely right. It is called pop where I'm from. However, I also refer to it as soda now. because I worked very hard to no longer be
Is
Midwest.
that what's on all their riders? You just saw it so many times. You're like, oh, well, Steel Panther wants soda, so I got to write soda, not pop.
Yes, I had to figure that one out. Yeah, but there I just was a musician, and I painted houses because I could have tattoos and long hair and my weekends off. So then when I moved to New York City in 2005, and I continued painting in New York for a couple of years, which was just, again, I was what I knew. And my wife, the woman who's my wife now, I was living with her at the time. We weren't married yet. She worked at Sony. And so I started meeting kind of some of her friends and other people. And just, I got to a point where I wanted to make a change. And to her credit, she let me resign from being a painter and live on savings for 3 months while I interned. And I interned at a publishing company and at a place called MI2N, which is like a news site, but for world music. And I did both of those for 3 months until I got the opportunity to go work for Buddy Lube, which was the technology the company I was just telling you about.
Wow.
So
did you meet your wife in New York, or is she also Midwestern?
No, she's from Connecticut, but she lives in New York. We met in Youngstown, Ohio, which is exactly 6 hours from each place. 6 hours from New York and 6 hours from where I'm from, just south of Indianapolis. And we met at a stoner rock festival.
Huh.
I went out there to meet chicks and hang out and be like badass with my buddies in this stoner rock band. And they were like, you want to go to this festival? And I was like, hell yeah. Cause I thought festival. So I'm thinking like 20,000 people and like girls everywhere. It was like 400 people in a club in Youngstown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We played some of those.
Yeah. It was called the Nyabingi. The club's now gone, but a tiny little club. And I think she was one of maybe a dozen women at the whole weekend. And most of them were with other bands. And I just, she asked me what time it was on one day, and I was like, "How you doing?" And
take this man to Vegas. Sounds like he works the odds pretty well.
Amazing.
I got lucky. I did get lucky. Yeah.
Wow.
So what prompted the move to New York? Was it the job?
I mean, at that point, I was like, I wanted to get out of Indiana. I could not have waited. I mean, Indiana was just not. It's, I lived in a town called White Land, Indiana, and it's across the street from New White Land, Indiana, and on the other side of Indianapolis from Whitestown, Indiana. So
my God,
that's Indiana, so the sooner I could get out, the better. And I had my first marriage ended and my band had broken up, and I was like, you know what, it's time for something different. So I was kind of looking for anywhere, and I possibly was going to go to Chicago. I went up there and auditioned for bands, and I looked at Boston and LA and all over the place. And then when I met her, I had never been to New York. And so we kind of were corresponding and getting to know each other. And she came out and spent a weekend with me. And then I flew to New York. And as soon as I got to New York, I was like, oh, this is the city. This is what I say this all the time, but it's 100% true. It's the first place I'd ever been in my life where I wasn't walking faster than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is where I need to be. And so from that point,
Jason,
she and I
never
were
gone walking with me because I walk faster than everybody, and I walk in front of every girl I've ever dated, and I'll be 6 miles ahead of everybody.
Oh
and
my God,
grandma's
so
behind
bad.
me, and it's so rude. Siobhan's like, are you gonna wait for me? I'm like, who are you? So I'll go walking with you anytime, bro. Let's do this.
We'll do it. We'll speed
Yeah,
walk.
we'll be a social
Picture you guys
experience.
speed walking.
Oh, but by the way, I heard you saying something about falling off the stage, and then I remember reading an interview with you, and I wrote it down. It says that the edge of the stage is a physical manifestation of how you feel of the music industry, but then you never explain what the fuck that means. What the hell? What kind of statement is that, Jack Handy?
I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe the host wasn't quite as accomplished as you and didn't follow up in the appropriate manner. I think that's.
I thought I said it was produced by Lekberg Enterprises. What's up with that? No, I'm just kidding. What does that mean? I thought that was a really interesting statement.
That is. I like that.
But I want to know because what our viewers may not know is that Jason, much like Dan Beck, is an oracle, but from a different time. So where Dan's like a brontosaurus that's in like a different time period, hanging out with like the other, animals before the giant thing, the meteor hits the world. Jason's now like rediscovering he's part of, the transcendence of a singularity of how the world's going to change, because he is the future by understanding all of these things. So everything that comes out of your mouth, it's like an epiphany to me, because I only know what the brontosaurus has told me. You know what I mean? And now I'm finding out that what was once then, there's since been a meteor, and that everything that you're telling me is now the accurate thing.
That was such a long explanation.
It was incredible. I absolutely loved it. I love that. And honestly, you know what? Every time I talk to Dan Beck, I also walk away going, that conversation is going to make me a better music marketer. Like that guy. That's awesome. I have met so few people in my career that just have such wisdom and knowledge. And such a calm strength to it too. Every time I talk to him, I go, wow, like, why did I never think of that?
Because he could be like, at the end of the day, everybody you've ever worked with pays me. That's a good point. He told us the music industry, like everybody in the music industry contributes to his fund. I'm like, everybody's like everybody. I'm like, so everybody. You're like the panhandler holistically for the music industry. So like he's the Tony Soprano.
But he's so creative, though. Like when we interviewed him, that was something that I learned about him, because I hadn't, talked to him much like on a personal level. But I was like, wow, this guy is like the perfect fusion of someone that's like executive power with like super creativity. Because a lot of people, it's just one or the other, and so it's probably why he's so successful. Absolutely. Yeah.
And empathy. That's the biggest thing for me is that, I did my time, as you said, in Epic. I was at the majors, and then I went to 11-7, which is it's basically a major label, but it's a giant independent. And I hated every minute of working in that structure. I loved the bands and I loved what I did, but the environment is so toxic and it's so just like combative and horrible. And I hear him talk about his time when he was there at a time that was even more toxic and more insane than I was. And he has the clarity and the empathy to understand what really mattered and how to talk to the people internal to the company. And that's one of the last conversations he and I had. I took so much away from it.
As a stupid person to understand what you're saying. So where you were on the edge of the stage, Dan is off the stage crowd surfing to the end of the venue, maybe out of the venue. Like
it's very possible.
In Amsterdam.
It's very possible. I mean, to speak, I'll speak to that analogy. What I was saying is that both for myself personally and the music industry, where I think it should be, is at what I like to call the bleeding edge. You need to be at the very forefront of everything that's happening. And music, there was a time when music introduced technology to the world. Music introduced the CD to the world. I mean, the Philips Corporation that invented the CD, the music industry went to them and said, we want the exclusive right to exploit this technology for a certain amount of time. And in return, we're going to give you a piece of music sales. So the Philips Corporation made a bunch of money off the music industry so that the music industry could go take CDs and introduce it to the consumer and say, here's the new way you're going to experience music. Because the music industry at the time was smart enough to go, hey, everybody's going to rebuy all the albums we already sold them, right? So there was a time when that was the cutting edge of technology. And that's how I like to think about where we need to be in the music industry. We need to be thinking always about what's next. What's the next thing? How do we reach people in a different way? And for myself personally, I want to be at the edge of the stage. I want that little bit of fear that like, I don't know if this one's going to work out. I want to be the first person to do things. I want to be right there and go, this is everything I've got. And if it doesn't work, I'm falling into the abyss, but like, it's everything I've got. And to me, that's exciting. That's like, I don't want to just rehash the same marketing plan that somebody else has done. I don't want to pump out the same idea. I want to be like, what's different? How do we be different? How do we be special? That's why I pick and choose the projects I work with too. You guys are a perfect example. There is a
talk about a challenge.
It's absolutely a challenge, but there's something there because
Scott, our sponsor, called me today and said, Jason was so excited. He finally has something he thinks he can get behind. I'm like, oh, so it's not music related. You could say he's excited about people talking. Of course he is, because that's saleable. Trying to sell instrumental shred music to people is like saying, hey, man, let's try to sell, I don't know, Judaism to people door to door.
It's part of the same reason reason classical music is hard to sell, because, it takes a certain level of understanding of, the
Nobody
music,
owns
maybe
the copyrights. No one's making money, Siobhán. Bach.
No, but it's not that.
Dividends.
No, but performers are making money doing their, renditions of classical music. But yeah, a lot of it comes down to, having to educate the public on why this is cool. And that takes a lot more work than just doing something that's more accessible. There's more commitment in that, there's an extra step.
I mean, you don't think it's Scott Perlman?
But for the record though, I didn't say that now I've got something I can wear. That didn't happen. That's Scott. That's a Scottism.
That sounds like a Benny embellishment.
My telephone skills are terrible. The point is that, like, in fact, I'll tell my personal firsthand story. I called you, and I had said, that invite you onto the show, and you said, Benny, we got this. And normally I expect Jason to be like nihilistic, like, dude, if we barely get like 30% to home base, like, we'll be killing it. And now he's like, Benny, we got this. And I'm like, so the cool calm that he's talking about Dan Beck, it was the first time that Jason ever said it in the same sentence as my name. And about the show. I was like, oh my God, he's excited about something. And that energy transfers. And I called Scott, maybe this is it. Maybe we have to talk and yell in our basements to sell music. So, Jason, what do you think about that idea?
I think that that the thing that is the most compelling and the most exciting about what we consider kind of the great and the legacy artists that have happened in the music industry is that they are personalities. You hear people talk about the fact that the layman says they have it. We don't know what it is, right? But someone with it can sell, they can sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman wearing white gloves in the summer. Like, doesn't matter. So if you've got this new medium and you have the ability to go out and talk to people in a different way, let's do it. That's the same reason Michael Jackson could sell Pepsi and different people could sell other things. When you are that personality and you have that character, if there's a way to express it differently and a way to brave new ground with it, let's go do it. That's marketing.
I watched. He burned for Pepsi, man. And a giant conflagration, which is a song on chapter 2. LostSymphony.com. Conflagration. But I'm just telling you, all that went up in flames for Pepsi. So if anything, if you have empathy, which is what we like about Dan Beck, you should go buy Pepsi just to remember Michael Jackson.
No, but to go back what you just said, I actually just saw this great little mini docuseries on Netflix about Garth Brooks. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's really good. And that's really what it's all about, is like, why is he such a sensation? And so much of it really just comes down to that it factor. It's like he had people that were willing, like in his hometown, to give him money to support him going to Nashville. And people wanted him to be successful. And it was because of him. I mean, obviously great musician, but there was something that was like that fire, that had nothing to do with music.
Can I defer to the professional here? So here's what I think it is. So while there's everybody else doing EDM and doing pop music and metal over there, on an island out that way with a bunch of tequila and rum and just fur jackets and all that, there's all the country people making fucking money. It's called Nashville. All those people are just destroying everything.
Nashville's not an island, though.
I know, I'm just making that up. The point is that it's like an island, and it's like a heaven, it's like Cloud 9, because country, to my knowledge, listen, I thought bands were big, and then you go to Country Fest every year, and they have, whether it's Garth Brooks or whatever, I can't even think of country people that are at those places, but great guitar players, Keith Urban or someone, and you're happy if you have 200 people to see your metal band. And it's like, if you don't have 75,000 people capacity at the Country Fest, doesn't even matter who's playing. If they're not singing Wagon Wheel, that's a whole different world, dude. It's because it's country.
No, it's because, but think about it, content-wise, it is the most accessible subject matter for most Americans, talking about
pop.
Home on, it's pop, but even just
with
lyrics.
The Southern drawl.
But lyrically.
Everyone empathizes with what people hate or are upset about, and what's country music about? It's about losing your farm, it's about losing your dog, but we've emulated it to pop, right? So it's now about losing your boyfriend if you're Taylor Swift. Thank you, Max Martin, the guy living in Sweden that knows all about country music. I'm just kidding.
That's what people relate to. Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, my personal opinion is that everything in the upper money echelon of every genre is just pop. Five Finger Death Punch, you can take those songs and play them country. That it doesn't matter what it is. Those 100%. Pick whatever rapper that you want, assign that. I mean, it's all just really actually pop. And it happens to be that country is very relatable to middle America. They feel very comfortable with it. They like it. And the big reason country music has so much more money too is because the genre and its listeners are still, I want to say this nicely. They still like older technology. Let's say that. So they're still buying
They're
CDs. They're nostalgic. They're nostalgic for CDs that they can put in their F-150 and drive around.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, and so
you can take that job and shove it. I'm gonna get my Bumblebee V10. I'm gonna take it out. I'm gonna do donuts in the parking lot.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, it does actually. But on the other side of things, there's not many places where one location is almost a genre. So you have like Nashville, which is almost like an industry to pump out country music. So that's so streamlined that it's set up for success. Really, it really is. Like you just have all these talented musicians that just spend 8 hours a day cutting songs, and then you have all these artists that go, "That's the hit. I'll take that one. Thank you. Bye."
Yeah.
Do you know why Siobhan's made it? Because she hustles.
What?
I said that one of the reasons you've made it in the music industry, which is why you're bigger than all of us put together, in your Star Set band, your Star Set Allegiance, Star Set Society, whatever it is because I just watched you walk from room to room and you like run. Everywhere you go, you have a mission.
You're
it's
because
never
I'm
bored.
saying it.
There's not enough time in the day for you. That's why you've made it. We're sitting here getting
I'm
fat.
saying it. No, it's fine. I left my mom with her car key, so I have her car key. Anyway, keep talking. I'm here. Sorry.
I mean, the point that you're making, Benny, though, is very, very valid. And in fact, we talk about people who have it, and that's awesome. And the people who have it, that's important. You need that. But you also need the tenacity and I like to say, testicular fortitude to be able to stick it out in the music industry, because the music industry is a series of no's. Every single day, it's 15 different people that want to tell you no in one way or the other. And it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and stay standing. Right. And so you've got to have both. And all of the big stars have both. And they've been through everything. And they've been told no so many times. And they've had to believe in themselves. I mean, and you have to have both of them or you're not going to succeed. At best, you'll have a flash in the pan.
It does explain a lot of those egos, because to be successful in the music industry, you have to be a little bit delusional. I mean, because one of my favorite quotes, and I don't even know if it's a real one, but someone told it to me one day and attributed it to Bono. But someone asked Bono, from U2, did you ever think you'd be in the biggest band in the world? And he said, I always knew I was in the biggest band in the world. I just didn't know when the world was going to figure it out. And that's the type of ego, lead singer's disease, that David Lee Roth, from Van Halen, all those people have. But you have to have, you couldn't be David Lee Roth unless you were really that guy. And
100%.
It's part of being a musician, because what do you tell people, Jason, when they come in your office and say, we're going to be the next Lamb of God?
Okay, cool. If you want to do that, here's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
There's no
and
good
at the
luck
end of the
involved.
day, no, there's no good luck involved, because I'm not a fan of luck. I don't like the idea of luck. I think that I have to concede. I have to concede to the idea of fate, because I think it's impossible to deny that fate exists. But I don't like the idea of luck, and I think that that you make your luck. And so
I agree.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are as a band and how much it you have and how hard you work. The public gets to ultimately decide whether or not you get to have success in the music industry or in anything artistic. And that is an unfortunate reality. But there is a very clear set of steps of this is what you have to do to be able to create work, to market work, to put work into the public, and to promote it. And if you're doing those things and you just stay in the game, the people who are in here are just the ones that have stayed the longest. And there are people who have careers now that arguably probably shouldn't have the career, but they just wouldn't leave. And so they've got a career, and maybe they don't have a huge career, but they're succeeding. And I'm not going to name names, but there's several bands that come to mind, and I'm sure you guys can think of them. And then there's amazing bands who didn't have the tenacity to stick it in and say I'm going to be here every day. And because they didn't, they're not around anymore, even though they may be 10 times more talented than somebody else who was next.
I got arrested, and that guy Art from Everclear was trying to defend me as a lawyer. I'm like, why the fuck are you not on tour, dude? And he was like, I'm making money as a lawyer.
Really? What? Art Alexakis is a lawyer?
No, they actually, I think, well, that's actually a story. That's a true story. Was all those guys, I think, were lawyers, and that was their day job, and Everclear was their fucking like side gig, and that the reason that they like did their own thing was because they were actually lawyers. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I mean, could be again fact checked, dude. Like Facebook shuts us down. They're like, no, dude, that's actually Marcy's playground, sex and candy. I'm like, oh fuck, got my 90s wires crossed.
Art Alexakis does have a lot of lyrics about like divorce and legal things, and like so that's interesting. Yeah, like the one about buying you a house, and like that's I'm gonna look into that. Buy you a new life. Yeah. All right.
Learn something.
That guy's
new
a storyteller. Yeah. He's he's apparently a giant dick, but he's a storyteller.
He is a dick. I actually got stuck in a dorm room once with him at Providence College when I was like 17 years old. It was pretty funny. They were a good show though, and I think it was Soul Coughing was opening. It was a good show, 90s, like it was like PCU. Except it really happened. No Jon Favreau.
So you kind of
nobody got that. It's probably not even on Netflix.
I've seen PCU. I think I have it on DVD
listen,
somewhere.
You have to see PCU. If you haven't seen PCU, Spinal Tap, and Airheads, you're fired. But like most people, they're like PCU. You're like, dude, it has like Farley in it. It has David Spade in it. It has there's so many good people in that movie. But they've just and Steve Vai even wrote the soundtrack for it. The guitar player who did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure actually added guitar to that movie. So when they throw the meat out the window, and it's Jeremy Piven, the guy from what's that show? He plays
Entourage.
Yeah. He's Jeremy Piven. But the funny part is he has more hair now than he does in that movie. This is Jeremy Piven pre Ben Stiller days. This is like when he was in Something About Mary, when he had bad teeth and like hair plugs and he was kind of fat. Like that's PCU. And now you see Jeremy Piven and he's like all jacked with perfect hair. It's funny. It's a good movie.
I love the fact that your reference for Steve Vai is the guy who wrote the Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure. That's Steve Vai. That's what Steve Vai's done.
You know, Bencourt's like, dude, I played Beethoven. Fuck you.
Steve Vai hasn't done anything else in his career.
No, never.
That's it.
No, he's done nothing else. Fuck Crossroads.
A little while back, Ben brought up the what would you say if a band wanted to be Lamb of God? And I guess what would be, in a broad sense, your general advice to maybe a band that's never thought about marketing or only thinks about posting on social media as their marketing? What would a maybe newer band? What would be the first steps to get them on the path to that next level?
I think the first thing that you have to have is you have to have an understanding of what your brand is. What is your brand? Because you can't market anything. You can't post on social media. You can't have any kind of a consistent, marketing strategy whatsoever if you don't know what your brand is. What does it look like? Coca-Cola has a brand guide that tells you the Pantone numbers of the color that you can use when you're talking about Coca-Cola. They have a thing that shows how far every other word has to be from the Coca-Cola logo if it's being placed or printed anywhere. Like, get that granular. Write your brand statement. What are your colors? What is your band about? What are you saying that's different? What is your messaging? And then create a cohesive thing with that in mind. Everything that you're putting out there needs to be following that.
Literally sounds like my inner monologue when I'm having an anxiety attack. This is why you should hire Jason, because Jason will do all this worrying for you and then tell you what you're doing wrong, which he was happy to do. Trust me. And you want to know, he's always right. He's another one like Marty Friedman. At the end of the day, Jason will be like, okay, guys, you could do that. I mean, I've told you what I think, but you didn't hire me for what I think. And he's funny always right.
Musicians do really get overwhelmed with ideas like that. Like we just spent 6 months in the studio. We got this great record and everything. And like, all right, so what's your brand? You're like, stop.
Yeah.
Like that's scary.
We're gonna be the next Pantera. They haven't been around since 2004. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Go ahead, Siobhán.
No, I was just going to say that's one thing that I learned a lot from Starset about is like the music almost came after the brand idea. And that is so essential.
Look how many Scientologists Dustin has.
Oh my God. No, but there is something amazing about how consistent and how like incredibly precise everything is with the branding. And that definitely has to come first, because it's not something you can really fix later. Your brand has to speak through everything. And, it's something that I even struggle with, like, because, as creative people, we're so tempted to be like, oh, here's this cool thing I did. And like, even just the way you represent stuff that you're working on that might make sense to you, it might not make sense to the person who's looking at it. But you realize
that Starset gets to have the stage show and all those extra trailers that Jason was talking about being in the next echelon, because Jason
Costa.
Jason Costa. I'm sorry. To get people to reference Jason Costa, the drummer from All That Remains, was like, to get from the van to the bus is a big deal. And you get from the bus to the van that has like the lots of buses. And I'm like, like Starset. And it's because Dustin literally is like, I'm going to invent a universe. I'm going a universe, space. I'm going to make that mine. I'm going to take over, the web. I'm going to call this one space. And we're Starset. And there's a society.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know about it, but I've learned enough through like osmosis that like I already know everything about your brand, and I wake up thinking about your music and I don't even know the lyrics.
But that's how precise a brand has to be. You do almost have to have a story. Like your story has to be so precisely well written, and I think you're totally right.
Well, and Starset too. I mean, I think Starset is probably the best example I've seen of this in the last decade from like new bands that have come out. Avatar did a great job.
Yeah.
But I would say Starset is even more on point, because like that first promo image where the three members are in the full glass helmets, and like when you see that and you see the name Starset, you automatically know immediately. You know what that is, and that image,
it's like Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, like it's that's iconic. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I understand this brand. And that is beautiful to me. Like that's one of those bands that, I'll just be honest. I'm not a big fan of the music, but I'm also not a big fan of like active rock kind of in general.
Right.
I don't chase a lot of that, but the branding, I've been paying attention to that band from the jump, because I'm like, whoa, they got it. This is
you go
beautiful.
to the show and people are like literally and I said this in a previous podcast, but people will actively like push the brand into your face. Like if you're not witnessing what's going on, they will involve you. Like to the point of like questioning, like, why are you even here? Like, do you really know what's going on? Like, have you been audited by Dustin? I have. Like, and they go on about it, but like they all understand. And like I said last time, I was like, I know these people, and they're like, yes, we know these people. They're Starset.
Yeah, it's a whole universe. He created a universe, and then everything that falls into it makes sense. The use of technology, it all just complements the message.
By the way, I know that I say, and I just want to go on record saying this. I know I talk a lot of crap about you guys, but like I say that because I'm just so amazed that like it's again like I look at it and I say Scientology because Isaac Asimov, the famous science fiction writer, said to Hubbard, who's the guy that invented Scientology, you can't make up a religion. And he's like, oh yeah, and pretty much was like, hold my beer, and then made Scientology. And Dustin's kind of like, hey man, like you can't make up more things about space. And he's like, really? I'm going to put space people and make Jason Lekberg say it's iconic. And I'll say a Beatles comment afterwards, and he doesn't even say that I'm wrong.
Yeah. Look, it's, and here's the crazy thing. Like they're not the only space themed band. That's the thing that is so good about it, is that not only is it a very specific brand about space, but within that, it has its own visual language. It has its own marketing. It has its own theme. And that's, that's the level that you need to get to. And I think that even carries bands. And I know this is completely unpopular opinion, but I say it all the time. I don't like Kiss. I think Kiss songs are weak sauce.
Ace Frehley, Space, is the spaceman, but is Starset, I think, with 2 billion streams, you might actually be the real space people. Because he was a spaceman. Because there's people, like I'm telling you, there's a bunch of people that listen to country music as well that would probably beat you up for saying that Kiss aren't that the spaceman is not the real space people. But there are so many people from Starset that if you put those people in the same room, that I think the Starset people would win now. Like times have changed; they are changing.
Oh my God.
I think, it's just super important, and Cory, to your point that started all this, understanding that brand, understanding who you are is definitely step number one. And then step number two is making sure that everything you do reinforces that brand.
Right.
And then from that point, it's about, look, I've said this very, very often, like the music industry and everybody who works for you in the music industry, their job is to find new audience for you. That's all we do. Every single day we get up and go, okay, wait a minute, who hasn't heard this yet? And how do we get them to hear it? And then the public gets to decide whether or not they like it. But we're just getting it to the audience, right? And when you have a hit, then the job switches to running ahead of the band, being like, let's move everything that could possibly trip them, right? But because a hit does its own thing.
Hold on,
so,
but just to be the devil's advocate, but let's say like you're someone like me and I'm a stupid guitar player in a band and I hear what you just said and I go, but what's the difference between you and my mom sharing it on Facebook?
Oh, ostensibly, nothing.
Okay. Because my mom's really good at sharing things. And I actually know Anne-Marie is really good at sharing Siobhan stuff. And there's even people that share Siobhan and Brock stuff that's not even them. So,
right. Well, I mean, look, it is, yes. And social media has changed things significantly. That's one of the main ways that social media has changed things. But, there's something to be said for relationship. There's something to be said for strategy. And, I know people who are my peers or people who I work with. Mom. Well, there you go. That's good. That helps. I've worked with some bands that I don't get along with, so that, that causes problems. But, the issue is that I'm not scared of any of the tactics being out there because they're already out there. It's about follow through and about who can actually execute. So yes, your mom can share, but can your mom put together and actually execute a 3-month social campaign with multiple assets that tell a story that's cohesive?
Andrea, Jason Lekberg from Lekberg Enterprises is putting you on notice. No, she listens to these, and I know we were told by the sponsors, which are Lost Symphony, LostSymphony.com, to not get it too personal. But like my mom does listen and audit all of these things. So like the fact that I'm talking about her, she'll say, but I can do that. And you have to understand, my mom, like let me just give you a background. She's Greek Orthodox, but she chose to be Jewish. You know what I mean? She's a Jewish mother because my old rabbi said that you aren't born Jewish, your soul's born Jewish. And my mom's soul is a Jewish mother. So just realize that anything you say that you can't do, like my grandfather said, you're not going to play piano, here's a guitar. And my mom became a classical pianist in college. She learned how to play piano at a really high level, like probably better than I can even play. I mean, I can't. But the point that I'm getting at is, I love that you're saying that because she literally is going to be like, but I could do that, Jason. Yeah. You know what? I can put it together. You'd be surprised.
You just lined up some competition now.
I may have just worked myself out of a job. I don't know what just happened there.
Oh my God, no.
No, but what you were saying. No, but what you were saying about executing a plan with like all these different facets, I think that's you should keep going with that because I think that's interesting. Like some people probably fall short in one or two of those, different areas, and maybe talk more about it.
Because it is, and it's not just about executing, but it's also understanding. To some extent, they're all guesses, but understanding kind of from experience, what are the bets that we need to take? And some things are, make more sense for a certain genre or for a certain artist or whatever it is than others. And, figuring those things out and then helping execute, down that lane. And everything matters. That's the thing. It's like, it's one of the most frustrating things about the music industry. You can never do enough. It doesn't matter how big you are. I mean, I talk about this a lot, but like there's 7.5 billion people on the planet right now, right? So how many records has Led Zeppelin sold? How many records have the Beatles sold? Even if they've sold 400 or 500 million records, there are still more people that don't like the Beatles than do like the Beatles. 25% of the
world has streamed Starset.
Great. But that's only 25. 75% of the world doesn't like Starset.
No, that's a good point.
It doesn't matter how big you are. The work is never done. Right. There's always more to do. And to a certain extent, that can be comforting because you can step back and go, okay, all right, I've worked hard and there's always going to be somebody who's going to say something negative and I just have to accept that and that's life. But on the other side of it, it's like you can always do more. So everything matters, but it's about looking at all of the things that are possible, looking at your budget, looking at the human capital and the energy that you have and making the choices for which of these things are likely to deliver the most results the fastest, and focusing and developing a plan to navigate through those. And that's just experience. That's just doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you see bands doing that they should stop immediately?
He has opinions.
There's so many things. There's so many things.
Good question.
I will say this. All right, so one of my big pet peeves, and this is probably because as a musician myself, I have experienced this one a lot, but like if you understand, I'll say this as a general and then I'll dive into it. One of the biggest things that goes across everything is know your lane. Know your lane. Know what lane you are in and who you're talking to and what lane they're in. Understand that. Mm-hmm. It's just pivotal. So you have to educate yourself. And if you're talking to somebody that is operating at a different level of the industry than you are, you have to rise to that level. You have to speak on that level. You have to understand their wants and their needs. Otherwise, you're just wasting their time. So that's kind of in general. In a specific thing, like get the fuck off the stage. Like if you are a local band from fucking wherever Bumblefuck Egypt, you know what? You don't need an in-ear set. You don't need full stacks. You absolutely don't need your own lighting rig, and you don't need three crew members. Get the fuck on the stage, play less than a 30-minute set, and get the fuck off the stage.
I don't even care if they have 3 crew members if they're on and off in 5 minutes, because I could by myself could set my shit up, and I don't mind that if there's like crew and to get them the fuck out of there. The problem is when you have a band that plays, like they're like, oh yeah, this is our last song, just kidding, and they're already 7 minutes over, they brought nobody, and then you get your set cut because all your friends are fucking waiting, but you're the band that's in the middle that has to make up for the fucking time.
Yeah,
because that's always the perfect
really
time slot. So and then you have the people there, and then people get mad because they're like, why did you only play 24 minutes when for 17 months you've begged us to come to your show? And it's like, because that band not only played an extra 32 minutes, but the fucking sound guy, who apparently now is paying attention to time, was like, hey, it doesn't matter. We'll give you a line check. You know what? Change your guitar. Fucking tune it. In fact, use another guy's head from another band because we know you don't even have one that works. And that's fine because I'm always the guy getting cut off that actually worked hard to get people there to get the slightly better slot. And then the sound guy realizes after snorting the fucking line of ants with Ozzy in the back that, hey man, maybe you should stick to schedule. So Jason, holy shit, there's nothing you could have possibly said that I could possibly amen more than get the fuck off the stage, take the pedal board, throw it, just fucking get the fuck off.
They need the selfie with the crowd though.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
For the social media post.
One of my
you're totally go ahead, sorry.
One of my favorite ones is we played, I'm not even going to say where because this band might see this, but I was on tour and we played in a city out in the West, and the band that one of the opening bands on the night showed up with a drum kit that was permanently mounted to a drum riser. Because their drummer always had to have his own riser, so he had one of these metal grates.
This band.
And the drum kit was like literally like bolted down to the riser. And so normally what they would do is they had their crew there and they would grab the whole riser and walk it up on stage. They had apparently never been to this venue before and didn't realize that this venue had one of those like 4-foot walls across a good section of the stage. Oh, it's like one of those old bars, and this used to be like where the tables were. Now this is where the stage is. So they couldn't, now they had to not only lift it up onto the stage, they had to lift it up another 4 feet. The whole drum riser, metal drum riser, and the kit, and they couldn't do it. Like they weren't strong enough, so they had to go like recruit more people to come over and nightmare. I was just like, fuck you. Fuck you.
That's insane. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that also proves the point that you just have to be willing to be flexible with like, you can't necessarily require something like at the burden of other people. You got to be able to like run with it. No, I mean, there are always going to be
There's always a drummer
snafus
that asks to use other drummers' fucking shit, and then they put a giant fucking thing in the snare. They fuck up the top head, and then you get your cymbals back cracked because they're like, hey, we don't have cymbals. First off, it's one thing to ask to use a stool, to use a fucking kick pedal, but to use someone's cymbals, that's just like, hey, can I put my spit in your mouth? Fuck all those people. I just want you to know I hate every one of you, and if you all spontaneously combusted simultaneously,
so this reminds me of a long time ago before Ben and I really knew each other. We both played in bands in Boston, and every now and then our bands would cross paths, and inevitably before every show I would get an email. hey man, are you bringing your cab? I was gonna, I just figured it'd be easier if I just used your stuff. I'm in this. I have a recording studio. The Ben Goodman emails preceded our long, very deep friendship that we share now.
I will
That's
tell you
amazing.
though, that's because this certain promoter knew that I'm a gear whore. So he was like, you could just backline every show. I'm like, but why do you think that my drummer wants you to have all those bands rape his kit? And then why do you want me to take my beautiful Mesa cab and have Tweedledum and Tweedle fucking stupid over here put like the wrong impedance to it, and they don't even, what's impedance? It's why it's exploding, you fucking moron. So yeah, that's why I would write to people like you, because I would always make a note when I'd ever see another guitar player, he's not fucking stupid. I'm like, oh wow.
I was on the not stupid list.
No,
Yes.
and then I'd be like, okay, has a 5150 big block right behind him. Good tone, heavy, willing to carry heavy things. And I'm like, must have a cab that handles a 5150, plays a Gibson, sounds in tune. This guy is going to be the guy that I'm going to email, and for once in my life, I'm not going to let that certain promoter, who I will remain nameless because I love him, and I would like to play a show in Boston again, but like, not have him ask me to ask, again, you guys know Paul Lorenzo. Paul, first off, doesn't even like people being near him, never let someone touching his kit. Like that scene in Step Brothers, where like, did you touch my kit? That is literally Paul. So every time I'd ask Paul to let someone use his kit through this same guy, he would just be like, the same if you ask someone, can I use your toothbrush? You know what I mean? Like, and he's like, but it's for our band. We're going to get exposure. We're going to get a better slot. Can you use your own toothbrush?
So yes, know your lane.
Lanes. I mean, that's honestly like, I look at it this way, like you just have to understand where you are. You've got to understand, like that would be like showing up to, a Formula One race and thinking you're just going to walk out on the grid and hop in a Formula One car out of your Honda Civic and just be like, yeah, I'm here now. Like, you got to understand where you are and what you're doing and who you're talking to, because there is no job in the music industry that's easy. Not anywhere, from the bottom all the way to the top. If you're Metallica, you are still walking into every single show going, how many tickets did we sell? Did we cover the nut? Is the promoter happy? Yeah. What's going on with merch? We've put out a lot of money up front for our merch. Are we going to hit our numbers? It doesn't matter how big you are. You're still thinking about that. They put on Orion Fest and lost their asses, right? Like you can still lose. They made that movie and lost like $4 million. They're Metallica. Right. So
yeah, but now they're making $8 million a night, and the only person making more money than them is Ed Sheeran. So it's like, you know what? Like it's like me saying, hey, I lost 17 cents on Galaga in 1981, and like that's how it's like for Metallica to not make $4 million. I feel. But
it's a bigger thing than that, because yes, maybe they're making $8 million a night, right? But when they're making that $8 million a night, they're going to a promoter and saying, if you want us to play, we want $8 million. And if that promoter only brings in $7 million that night, that promoter is then no longer going to book them and give them $8 million. And that promoter is going to call every other promoter and go, hey, I'm bankrupt now. I'm $1 million upside down. So there is consistently stress. It never stops. So there's the biggest rock star is still stressed about what's going on with them. So if you're talking to somebody who's higher up the chain, if you're talking to somebody else who's another part of the industry, understand what their stress is. Learn what they need to do their job. And if you can make their job easier, you're going to get what you need. But you can't just walk up to them and talk about like what you need. Talk about like, oh, give me a record deal. Fuck your record deal.
The subtext of my comment originally saying, what do you say to somebody that says they want to be a Lamb of God, which is, to me, really the point that I was getting at is that this isn't easy. You don't do this for fun. Yeah. There's nothing about this that isn't anxiety ridden. The whole reason you write good songs and stuff like you do, I'm sure, Jason, is the same why we do, is because we have an inner conflict and we need a way to get it out. And we yell at people or we play guitar or violin, and people that get into it because they want to get chicks and because they want to like be famous and they want to be like Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift. that's what I'm expecting when people say they want to be the Lamb of God, because people are delusional in the sense, there's one way of being delusional like Bono, in that you work for it really hard, but you also think that you're the best person ever and that people will figure it out sometimes. It's another thing to walk in and say, hey, we're owed this because we showed up with black leather pants. And that's the thing I'm trying to differentiate to people is there's nothing about music that's easy. We said on with David Abraziz, even when Pearl Jam sold 1 million records in a week, they were only paying themselves $400 a month each, and this is the reality.
Level, I was going to say that level of humility and like self-awareness is so important. And if there's one thing I have to say about like my experience, which is why perhaps I have been, let's say, lucky because I've ended up in all these situations.
Having your own bus?
Is that I have maintained that level of humility, and I don't treat a gig that's paying me $5,000 different from one that's paying me $100, because I understand that people are all coming from different areas, and of course, there's some things I've done for free. I was going to say,
really you've stuck around us for.
I was going to say, I didn't pay you when you first came down. You actually flew yourself down here. I was like Tom Sawyer you should paint this fence, Huck.
No, but the point is, people know that they can rely on my level of professionalism, and that I'm going to respect their project and what they're doing, and that I'm going to do my absolute best job regardless of what they're offering me. And then when you maintain that reputation, that's something that spreads really fast. If someone says, well, you know what? If you don't want to have to worry about your violinist, hire Siobhán, because they know that I'm going to do my homework. I'm not going to ask questions from people that are too busy dealing with stuff. Dustin deals with this all the time. People will try and get in his face about something that's like down here when he's operating up here, and there's all these other people in between they need to talk to first. And that pisses someone off because, he's trying to maintain the big picture of stuff and then gets bogged down by little things. And I'm sure that he knows with me, it's like, I'm not going to bother asking him about something that I can figure out myself first, or go through the whole process first.
The troglodytes should never mix with the lords. It's just feudalism.
I will say this, though, that the other thing about that, too, is that it is astonishing how, and I'm going to use this word easy. Easy may not be the right word, but how quickly it is possible to move through the ranks, especially on the business side of the music industry. Because if you are competent and you work hard and you're willing to work hard, does not take that long to work your way. Look, I'm example of it. I was a house painter, and a year and a half later, I worked at Epic Records. And that is just because... By the way,
that's such an unbelievable story. And I really, every one of the episodes that we have someone tell a story like that, like Adam Gilbert from Starsight was telling us how he worked really hard in high school and put himself and worked on drums and read books, and hearing you say, look, man, I painted houses, but you know what? First off, I had someone that believed in me enough to say, you know what, let's put some money in the kitty, but I believe in you. And you know what, look, you're here right now. You've worked, like the list of people that you've worked with is astonishing, and you should be proud of yourself. And you are an example, and this is why I said this, of one of the hardest working people in the music industry, and probably why you're anxious all the time, just like me.
That's true. And I thank you. I really appreciate that, but it's something that you got to keep in mind, because as you're saying, that you go do that free gig, or you go do that $100 gig, you don't know who else is also doing a free gig or a $100 gig right there. And that PA might
Garth
actually
Brooks did a free gig in the park, and that's why, because he did the free gig in the park. Remember that? It was the biggest gig ever. And then he was trying to make it the biggest selling album. He made like 17 covers because he's a fucking genius, and it's country. Just going back to the Garth Brooks thing.
Country, yeah. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that like it's important to always be, as you're saying, Siobhán, professional and things like that, because the person you're talking to today that you think is nobody, you may walk into a room 2 weeks from now, and all of a sudden they're the person that decides your fate because of where they are and how the industry works. And it's just so important. Know your lane. Know what you're doing. Always be professional.
Well,
and it's a small industry.
Well,
it really is.
Well, one of the credos we've always said on the show is that it's the same people on the way up as it is on the way down. And 100%. One of the first things that Scott Benson, again, our sponsor at the label for Lost Symphony, said to me is never burn bridges. So I was like, I'll invite him onto my show.
Yeah. I see what you did there. That's funny. I see what you did there.
That's
funny.
Oh man, no, but
you got
so
2020.
True.
I got 2020.
No, but going back to reference Garth Brooks again, not that that's the theme of the show, but one thing that I remember from that documentary was he was talking about, I think it was the second time he tried going to Nashville, and he went with his manager across to all the different labels, and they basically all said, no, we're not interested. And he was playing like this regular gig at one of these places where the labels would go scout. And so a lot of people, I guess, had showed up to see this other artist. He was there super early. He was like ready to play whenever. This one artist was late. They said, hey, Garth, you want to go on? All these label execs that just turned him down were there to see this other artist. He got up and played, and they all came back. They're like, maybe we made the wrong choice.
Right. You want to know a fact about Cory? Cory's biggest, most heard thing that he's ever done on the bass is Garth Brooks.
No, well, technically, I guess.
Millions of views.
A cover of Garth Brooks.
Well, but I'm saying, yeah, Cory.
I didn't even know about that.
Cory and I.
Ben and I worked on the All That Remains cover at the studio with Ollie. And I am uncredited bass player.
And I am the uncredited pianist and arranger. Like, when we got that song, to give you guys an idea, it sounded like Howard Benson said, and quote unquote, and I'll say it because I'm sure he'll tell you the same thing. It sounded like a bar band covering The Thunder Rolls, and it did. It didn't have a solo in it. It had like no. I'm like, first off, how do you have a fucking All That Remains song and you're covering without Ollie doing a solo? And it was just like really muted. So Cory and I kicked our ass to put it together, and we thought it was awesome. And what we sent off to him, we thought was amazing. And it got changed a little bit. With the chick being added and some other things.
They chopped it up. It's, as people do. They were struggling.
But our
when we're trying
biggest
to
success
get
ever.
That.
We don't get. I had to change it on Wikipedia myself because it said Howard Benson did it. But
thank God we get it on video. Otherwise, no one would believe us.
But our biggest success, Siobhán, was playing country, namely Garth Brooks.
Wow. I guess what my point of the story was that you're right. Like, luck doesn't necessarily exist in the way that people ascribe it to, others. They think you're lucky, but a lot of it is that person was there and they were ready and they like showed up hours before, and they just knew when their time was to step in, so it's about stepping up and being there,
He's done that his whole career. I mean, because if you remember, he was, the biggest country star on the planet next to maybe Travis Tritt in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And then he did that Chris Gaines record that nobody talks about, that rock and roll record that didn't exist, right?
Right,
so that happens. He's in this situation where like his fans don't know what's going on. He's this big pop country star. There's people that are like, that's not real country, whatever it is. And then either he or his manager, I don't know who it is, but one of them decided that he was going to do SNL. And he went and did SNL, and the cold open of that SNL was a bunch of cowboys, ragged old cowboys, sitting around a fire out in the middle of the desert going, you know what I love about being a cowboy? I love rustling them cows. And they're talking about cowboy stuff. And they get to the fourth person, and the fourth person turns around, and they've got a rhinestone cowboy hat on and a Britney Spears mic, and it's Garth Brooks, and he goes, what I love about being a cowboy is like, my $1 million house, and just like, and just punks himself, right? Just completely punks himself. And I watched that, and I was like, that's it. I'm a Garth Brooks fan. I don't care. I will never listen to his music, but like the fact that he had the clarity to just go, now it's time. Now I need to take the piss out of myself, and like turned his career around. I think if he hadn't done something like that and hadn't just been humble and been like, here I am. Yep, I'm a rhinestone cowboy. I don't think he would be where he is today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're coming up on it, guys. This is the end of the
Well, first off, I want to say thank you to Jason because
oh my God, so much value. Everything you said is gold.
Well, and I want to say thanks to Scott for paying Jason so he can share all this information. Well,
we always say thanks, Scott.
Because it's really important for people to know that like we really met Jason because he comes in and he fixes bands. He knows because when you're in a band, like one of the hardest things beyond like, I don't know, writing a song and making it good, is actually knowing what the fuck to do when you have it. And really, Paul Geary, who was a good friend, we've talked about him a bunch. We called him. We're like, well, what do we do now? And he's like, well, you should call Jason. Like he was the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Like, well, I got a guy. And then like Jason showed up like 23.4 seconds later, and it was like, here are all the problems you have. And it was like 75 pages. And we were overwhelmed. We were literally overwhelmed. And it's been now quite some time.
You guys already released this?
And listen, all the things that Jason has said over these months, he's been right about everything. But like, talk about anxiety. We have been the number one anxiety attack for this guy. So I'm so glad that you were able to come on and share a lot of your just sage-like knowledge with us because we only had the Brontosaurus before. And I call him the Brontosaurus because he's from another time. He really is like a fucking oracle. But you are just again, in the Venn diagram of things, there is the old way, the Tony Soprano, and you're like the Al Pacino moving up in Carlito's way, saying, I'm going to be somebody. And I appreciate that about you, Casey.
I hope someday I am somebody. Thank you.
Just don't befriend Sean Penn.
So humble.
All right. I promise I
Will you
won't.
stick around for another one?
I'll do it. It'd be great.
All right. Well, the rest of you guys just got fucking 2020. We'll see you later. 2020-d.com. Bye.